Let's create a pivotal impact. Friends in the industry. So throughout my career, I've always been really fond when anyone that's in a position of leadership asks me a question like, Josh, if we were to implement this, how would it impact your job duties? Because these two questions always made me feel a certain way. So first, it made me feel like my job performance was respected enough to be asked about these changes, but it also made me feel like I could respect that leader who is willing to get out of their office, come boots on the ground where I was, and ask, hey, Josh, how is this going to impact you? So in today's episode, I'm really excited to speak with Bob Briggs, president and co-founder of Pioneer Safety Solutions. Bob's journey, honestly, is super interesting, super exciting, but I really respect Bob's approach to creating change for the better. So I highly recommend connecting with Bob directly at pioneersafetysolutions.com or on LinkedIn. And of course, I've included all those details in the show notes below. So if this is the first time you've ever checked out a Truck Focus podcast, I really welcome you to our community. And to all of our dedicated listeners, just thank you so much for taking the time to listen and for all of your ongoing support. Make sure that you like this episode, share it out, and obviously subscribe to the channel you're listening on. As always, let's create a pivotal impact through this conversation, and let's get to it. Hey, Bob, welcome to Truck Focus Podcast. I'm really excited for our conversation today for a couple of things. One, your journey is quite fascinating. And I think seeing as you're from the East, you migrated to the West, and we're going to dive into your different experiences in that journey alone. I think a lot of people can relate to the resiliency that you've had to have in order to be successful in our industries. So I'm excited to dive into that. But also, I really respect your character. And that's something that's really stood out for a while now is Bob is who Bob says he is. And if Bob says he's going to do something, Bob does it. And I really value that because there's too many individuals in our industry, I don't think, that live by that type of code of ethics. So there's a lot that I'm excited about on the conversation today. So welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you very much for inviting me.
Totally. Yeah, no, I'm excited. And yeah, it's just nice to know that, like, even just prior to hitting record, your head's always in the game and you're always thinking about, okay, how do I add value to industry? How do I add value to our current customers, our future customers? And really, you totally embrace and lead with a mindset of technology. So I definitely see that we align. And yeah, just welcome.
Thank you. No, you're right. For me, it's a lot of years, over 30 years of seeing this from very, very many and different perspectives. And at the end of the day, sitting here now on the adventure that we're on now, it's really about, how do we take all of the things that we've complained about and, truck stops all over the world and help solve that at the end user's space, right? So, yes. What's there for the people that are actually using the tools, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I love that. And it's, it's cool. So before we get too far, why don't you start us off, describe, okay, who is Bob Briggs, but also highlight some of your experience in the transportation industry, but also the oil and gas industry.
Yeah, perfect. So like you said, I'm from Northern New Brunswick. And in Northern New Brunswick, I had a trucking company, had a few trucks. We did everything. We hauled whatever was making money at the time, whether it was tanker, flatbed, logs, you name it, we did it all. Did a lot of, mail line haul stuff and moved around a little bit, as an owner operator with a few trucks. And then from there, I kind of was very fortunate and I got recruited by a major oil and gas service company. And I ended up coming out here to Alberta to drive for them. But that didn't last very long. I actually drove for them for probably less than 4 months. And they asked me to be part of their driver training program. So I did that both in Canada and the US. And then from there, I was asked to move into an HSE position. And at the time, I quite honestly didn't know what HSE meant. So I went into that role kind of with the same attitude that I have today. I mean, for me, success is the people doing the job. All these businesses and that's like me being the president of Pioneer. I feel that the sharp end of the spear is probably the least important position, with the understanding that the sole role is for people to provide the solution to the people doing the job. So I was very successful in the HSE and environment role because I really went, for me, I didn't know really what I was doing at first. And all I knew was how to do the job. That's what I did. So I ended up, taking a very, very different approach. We looked at it from the end user. I talked to the people on the ground. I asked supervisors, and especially guys that are influential, where they have the almost the negative conversations on locations or whatever, where they're saying, this is no good and that's no good. And I asked them how we could turn this into positives, and I let them lead the charge and supported them in that. And we were incredibly successful doing that.
Nice.
So as that career went on, with the, I took care of everything that's land and ice base in Northern Canada. And again, my wife wanted to move down closer to her family. So we did that, built the house. And then I was, in the Arctic all the time. And I was really finding it difficult to be gone as much as I was. It was different when I was traveling and I was home, on the weekends and stuff, but I was traveling a lot. And I actually got a very awesome opportunity with telematics tracking solutions provider out of the US that I was one of their customers. And so I got recruited with them. I went with them and kind of found my passion, I suppose, because what we were able to do was start looking at, all this data. I started doing this stuff back in the tachograph days, and I hated it. I didn't want to see this stuff in a truck, just like everybody else. But then when I started to realize how supportive it truly was, when you start getting 95% of all of the, the data that you look at supports the driver, it's a great feeling. Your driver was speeding through a school zone, and I'm reporting him, and then when you look at the data and see that it was just an irritated driver that didn't want to do 30 through the school zone, so he thought he'd report the truck that was doing it. And when drivers start to see that people are actually looking out for them, it's fantastic. So great career that way, which moved me right into where I am. I seen the opportunity to start a business. The team that was willing to move forward with me are all 30-year hands, in large oil and gas sector, from the environment side, from the land transport side, from the health and safety side. And really from there, what we're trying to offer now is, big dollar programs to organizations that don't have that operating capital to be able to spend millions of dollars on it. We're here to help them with our experience and guidance, right?
Thanks. Told you from the beginning, Bob. I really respect your journey, and I really respect the fact that you weren't afraid of change. And I think you mentioned a couple of things there where change really stood out. So first off, being an owner operator, owning your own trucking company, doing what it takes, like you said, you'll haul kind of whatever. Then you created some mail lines, and then all of a sudden you're in a position out west that led to almost instantly, if you think of the timeline of life, 4 months is like a blink of an eye. And the larger corporation saw the value that Bob brings to the table. And I think that's something that I really wanted to highlight, because I think that's few and far between, where standouts never get noticed. And sometimes it's just they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe they're not vocal, or maybe they're not willing to do something new. And like you said, by doing something new, you are very effective, because far too often, and this is just from my own experience as well as others that have vented politely, as someone gets a promotion to a big important role, and all of a sudden the title goes to their head, and they're more focused on job security than they are making on an actual impact. And it's nice to know that you are willing to do something different by working with boots on the grounds and saying, okay, where are we at? How do we actually do this? Okay. And then from there, you're obviously finding gaps that you can fix. You're finding different hazards that maybe no one's ever identified before, because you can only see so much from a corporate office versus when you're actually in the camps, boots on the ground and stuff. And I really applaud you for that, because I don't think that type of behavior is celebrated enough for people that are actually making a difference. And that's where I get super excited. So just want to say that's really cool. But it's interesting too, where I just recorded an episode on automation, and I'm a big believer in automation and using the right technologies to better our businesses. And some of the quote unquote old boys feedback of, oh, you get bent, you don't know what you're talking about. ELDs are the corruption of the industry, all of that stuff. And it's like, not until you can use the data to defend the right person. So the school example, I've lived through that countless times, where someone wants to make a complaint and you're like, nope, Like I'm actually looking at the GPS right now on the phone because we have that fast of access. And what you're saying is false. Someone did not go 150 in a 50 zone. I'm sorry. It did not happen. They were doing 56. Like, what do you want me to tell you? So I like that you brought that up too. And just, yeah, the direction that you've taken all of your experiences to pioneer, I think it's really smart. And your team is very fortunate that you guys came together to create this environment where, like you said, businesses that need the solutions, they just don't know where to go. They don't maybe think, oh, I don't have the budget for that. Okay, well, let's make it work. I really respect what Pioneer does, and I'm excited to talk about that too. So a lot there, and I appreciate that. So I'm going to ask you a question. When you think about in self-reflection, you're owning your own business, and then you started working up high up in a major oil company. Was there anything in particular that you would credit to the success that you had during that career leap? Because some people stumble along the way, like I said. So was it something in yourself where like you tell yourself every night before you went to bed, nope, I'm going to make a difference? Or was it just, this is who Bob is, and through this experience, I'm going to help just, make this career change successful? Was there anything particular that happened?
Well, I guess for me, the fortunate side was like right away when I started doing this in the large organizations, I kind of realized that you got to ground yourself, right? Because quite honestly, a lot of times, getting that title, actually, you're over your head. And I'm not going to lie, at first I was. But what I did was I took focus. So, my inspiration, in all honesty, for all of this is my father, right? So my father was an underground miner, and he worked underground for 45 years. And in 45 years, he's won multiple awards for, doing the job. But I always remember him being offered supervisor positions, but not feeling confident enough to say, I can take a supervisory position. So as I started to move through, up the ladder and finding myself in, these large organizations, just this young guy from northern New Brunswick that's all of a sudden making big decisions. What I did was I just basically threw the anchor off the ship and said, listen, no matter what happens, I'm going to come back to this. Nice. And I'm, and understand why I'm doing this. So when I started talking to these guys, and you get out in the field and it's the same, no matter where you go, you get, a couple of people that are very influential. And if they're positive influential, you have one result. But if they're negative influential, you have another result. So I focused on the more negative individuals and said, listen, tell me the story. And quite honestly, you sit and 90% of it is venting. And it actually took a long time for them to open up to me. But when they finally got to that 10% of what makes the difference, they had the answer. And there wasn't enough conversations at the big table that could understand the objective. And again, it's not to take anything away from anybody that's in a position of authority, but you really have to ask yourself all of the time, is the things that I'm doing, am I going back to my anchor? Am I always doing it for the right reasons? And a lot of times, I've even found it in my career that I had to make a stand where I'd come home and say to my wife, hey, listen, I cannot ask these people to do this, even though the company wants me to, and this could cost me my job. And, I'm very fortunate because my wife said, look, you have to do what you believe in. And that is literally what's led me here. When I started to see people that, I say, hey, talk to me. And then one individual in particular that really stands out of my head. And he says, why? He said, you're not going to listen. And it took him 4 months before he finally came into my office, and he sat down in my office and closed the door. And like I said, we had an hour or so long conversation, and the last 5 minutes was the solution. And that individual left my office, went up for his rotation, and then we got a call from the producer that we were working for at that time and said, what did you do? Because one of the big things that they were struggling with was getting people to do warm up to work, right? But it was the way the message was portrayed to them. They would not do it. But when we had the conversation and I said, look, you golf, you're a big golfer. You don't stretch when you golf. Well, yeah, I do. Well, I said, then you're going to lift a great big kickstand and not stretch? Yeah. But, and he told me his complaints, and I said, perfect, go and do it now. You take charge and show me how it's done. And quite honestly, my success is not my ability or my brains. My success is the people around that bought into it, because I'm a firm believer. I can tell you whatever I want, but unless I'm convincing you it's the right thing for you, why would you bother?
Yes.
And these guys took charge. They had the answer. I didn't need to give them the answer. Who could I give the answer to? I wasn't there. I wasn't. And so again, I guess, to answer your question, the best feeling for me was when I finally realized that I'm doing the right thing, because I'm trying always to make sure that I go back to my anchor, and I'm providing the solution to the people that need it.
Yes. Powerful, man. Powerful. And it's nice because that's a very humble approach. And I think we talked about this when we went for coffee not too long ago, about like the power of leading with empathy over tyranny. And if it takes someone 4 months to actually say, okay, he's actually probably going to listen to what I have to say, that's real impact. And that, to me, that's the definition of a pivotal impact, where something you said led that gentleman to do the right thing. That, look at the trickle effect to a point where the entire company that they're working for was like, what did you do? Like, how did this happen? Like, I think that, again, it's an underappreciated skill set when HSE professionals are often the enemy, because they can go against operations, when it's like, no. Like, I actually help your company make a lot of money by making sure people are safe in the right mindset. But it's nice that you took it from their level approach. So again, just really well done. What, when you're in the role of an HSE manager, then what would you say was the greatest challenge that you led your team through that led to an ultimate success? Was it attitude? Was it technology? What would you say?
So I think it was a combination of two. So the first thing that I found was, as human beings, failure is tough, very, very tough. So what I spent a lot of time doing was trying to convince people that, listen, what you cannot do is fear failure, right? You can't live in that space of, I can't do anything wrong, because if I do something wrong, it's going to reflect poorly on me, and I'm going to get. And a lot of the investigations and stuff that we've done over the years, really, it's like spinning the bottle, and we're at fault. The driver fell asleep. Well, I'm more about, what are the things that we're doing prior to all of this that make sure that we're giving this driver or this operator or this technician or this anybody the ability to be successful. And it's more than writing, policy saying you will, and then sign on the dotted line saying you will. It's more about, what works and how can we make this better for you. And listen, don't fear failure, learn from failure. Because if you look at everything from the perspective of, you start a task and you end a task. If something fails in between that, between the beginning of the task and the end of the task, something has occurred that operated below the expected standard. So if you analyze all of that and you start to do it at even the smallest states of failure, like for example, driving, and you're distracted and you pick up your phone and you wander into the wrong lane. Well, that particular time you didn't hit a car and kill everybody. However, under slightly different circumstances, guess what? So we have to learn how to, one, recognize our successes. We have to also learn how to recognize our soft failures, the things that could have, under slightly different circumstances, could have led us in another direction. And we need to also learn to embrace the actual failures, the things that we see as a failure. And by doing that, we're responding to them, which in my opinion puts a lot of focus toward the end goal of not having the major failure. Right. So for me, I think from an HSE perspective, that was probably my biggest learning. Now, from a data and technology perspective, when in my position, I was very fortunate because, we get to do the vetting process and see all kinds of different organizations out there. And I'm going to tell you, like Pioneer, I've partnered with, people that I've known for many, many years. I made sure that we had the best best in class hardware. The software writers, I took a slightly different approach where I don't do the software internally. I hire a company to do it so that we're not at the mercy of, R&D costs. We're not at the mercy of any of that stuff. What we are at is the customers, or if the industry says, this is what we need, we're responding to the industry versus trying to push things to the industry that we think they need. But I guess the second big thing from the technology side of things is, when we started with the telematics, especially in the oil and gas space, I really believe that over the first several years, and still to this day, and I hear it every day when I talk to customers, I'm in a long-term contract, I'm not getting support, and I'm frustrated because I can't get support. Well, let me be clear. Pioneer's data is no better than anybody else's data. I mean, data is data. Yeah. The big problem that we have with data is understanding how to interpret the data. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. If we look at interpreting data, so for example, we put an algorithm that says, okay, if a driver drives good, the algorithm is going to make him green. If the driver drives bad, it's going to turn him yellow, and then it's going to turn him red. So based on that, what are your categories? Well, hard braking, hard acceleration, hard turn, speeding, whatever. But when you start to look through all of that data and you say, oh, look at this guy had a hard braking app, and it really brought his score down. So you can do one of two things at that point. You can coach that driver with a stick, or you can coach that driver with a carrot.
Yes.
Now, if you sit down and have that conversation with the driver and say, hey, listen, this event's here. Yep, I know about that event. Can you tell me about the event? Yep, I was going down First Street. Cars are parked in the side. Little kid ran out between the two cars. His mother was screaming. I slammed the brakes on. My question becomes, is that a negative event or a positive event? In an algorithm, it'll appear as a negative event. But after the conversation, right, it becomes a positive event and a good conversation, a meaningful conversation for when the next time we have a toolbox meeting and we say, hey, guys, there's a stretch of road over here, and it's quite dangerous because of the way the cars are parked. Now we're having meaningful conversations, and we're taking that data and we're being meaningful with the data. Yeah. So I guess for me, that would be the technology win in my career, is actually, working with the wonderful people that I have and learning, how to look at technology and data from another perspective.
And a thing that hit on the nail on the head too is a big conversation in our industry is driver retention, and how do you celebrate drivers? Well, publicly known, great safe driving practices. This is what happened. And well, you use your name, Bob. So this is what happened. And this is what Bob did. And this is how we need people to respond. If you boost them up politely and not cheesily, that's driver retention, because who do you think they're going to go home and tell? Hey, guess who got celebrated at work today? Them. Yep. And when they're out with buddies and they just happen to be drivers too, and they're all just, shooting the breeze, and you'll never actually guess what the safety guy did. You never guess what. And then all of a sudden, maybe you can take that to the extent. But when people are thinking, people make driver retention and celebrating professional drivers way too complex, when that's a perfect example. And that happens every day, where they just did a great job. Let's celebrate the fact that they did a great job, but let's use it as a learning opportunity. Maybe that makes the ranks all the way up to whoever your main directive is. And then they're like, hey, let's get this guy a t-shirt, or let's just do something to recognize the fact that, yes, there was obviously something here. But yeah, I think that conversation goes a long way. And I really like using data and analytics to celebrate. And I like the analogy of stick or a carrot too, because ultimately, when you're leading with tyranny, a stick is the first choice. But instead, if you can lead with empathy, then you can start thinking outside of the box. So I appreciate that. So you mentioned too, at some point in your journey, you decided, you know what? Okay, it's time to start my own company. I wanted to start branching out of my own. Obviously, you knew some really good people that collectively you're able to create something pretty phenomenal. So what happened, or what was your mindset that made you think, hey, you know what? I think it's time that I venture out onto my own and start your own safety solutions company.
Well, it had to do with a lot of things. And as a matter of fact, our CEO of Pioneer, who you know quite well, Mike, it was him that kind of made me think of this even prior. He was a customer of mine, and I had many, many customers. And I'm not going to lie, the company that I was with has beautiful technology, absolutely beautiful technology. Love it. I have no complaints whatsoever. But where the struggle was in the communication with the customers. And so two of my past customers actually work for us. One is head of risk, and the other one is the CEO. And we had a conversation one day, and Mike said to me point blank, he said, Bob, he says, you know what? We would not be with them if it wasn't for you. And in that space, it kind of clicked in my head, like, I don't know how many customers have said that to me. And I then thought to myself, you know what? The industry deserves better. Canada deserves better. You're talking a few minutes ago here, just past, about perception and looking at data and how we look at data. What we have to start thinking about is that, what do we do well? And I'll tell you what, the trucking industry puts a pile of safe miles on, but the second one goes off the road, all of a sudden it's a publicity thing that blows it way out of proportion. Yes. And quite honestly, if you look at it from a risk perspective, they're really the best drivers on the road, on the most part. I'm not going to say that everybody's perfect. There's people make mistakes. Yes, absolutely. So what we're trying to do, is take that information and show it. We're trying, like for our camera solution, like, how many times do we get one story to the police and the driver of the truck is saying, no, that's not how it happened, but the people in that car, there's 4 of them in the car and the 4 of them are sticking to their story. And then boom, we look at the camera and the camera goes, nope, the truck driver was telling the truth. Yes. And that's where I love it. And that's, that's the things that drive me, is to be able to change the image, to be able to provide success, to look for new ways. Like if you think about the demand of a truck driver or an oil field worker, working at 21-6 rotation, or on the road for 2 or 3 weeks, or, on the road and in the US someplace or whatever, and I got no load for you, so you're sitting in a foreign city, for a weekend, and meanwhile your family's at home. I think there's a lot of things that if we start to listen, if we stop trying to know everything and spend more time sitting and understanding, I think we can make changes that are beyond astronomical. Yes. New ideas, and not foolish ideas. There's a lot of ideas that already exist with some slight modification, and listening to the people that are actually pulling the trailers. I think there's a lot we can do. Yes.
Completely agree. And it's nice that you're still in the mind frame with Pioneer as you are when you first became an HSE manager, and you had that instant impact of, let's listen, what do people actually need? And I agree with you. I think, I often use the term professional driver because I really want to highlight the profession. And there's some drivers out there that do not identify, and I would not recognize as a professional. There's bad apples in any bunch, but you're right, there's countless professional drivers that literally are selfless, because if you look at the conditions that they're under, between road and traffic, to how customers deal with them, to there's no loads to come back, so you're missing this event, or you're missing this birthday. Like, it's a very selfless position, but it's a proud position, and it's a professional position. So I highly recommend that. Yeah, if you know a professional driver, to those listening, to say thanks, because ultimately, unless you've been behind the wheel or you've been really interactive with professional drivers to hear their stories and what they're up against, I think a lot of just society has no clue, and they take it for granted. So if you know a professional driver, make sure you give them a pat on the back. So Pioneer Safety Solutions, first off, where can people go to if they want to visit your website, check out on social media? But can you also walk us through just some of the direct services that your guys' company offers?
Yeah, absolutely. So we wanted to quite literally, become the one-stop shop. Not necessarily, here's our products and buy our products. We do have a range of products that, like I said earlier, we wanted to make sure that they were, not pretend products. They're real. They're the best there is. And in over a 30-year career, I've been able to make the right relationships to be able to do that. We wanted to make sure that the systems were very, very simple to install, very, very driver focused. And again, that's part of the reason why I did my R&D via a third party, where I pay them to develop what I want, because I want drivers to get into a vehicle, look at the tab, and it makes sense to them. And I can honestly say that the feedback that I've had since we started this it feels good, man. After being part of trying to manage an account and the customer's not happy, to be doing this where I'm getting phone calls saying, this is amazing, thank you. That's where the win is. So we do technologies. We do have very, very advanced camera solution with advanced ADAS, driver safety, lane departure. It'll tell you when you're creeping up because you're looking down and your foot slips off or release the brake a little bit and you're going to hit the vehicle in front of you. We can do multiple cameras for 360 view around the vehicle. We do ELD, Canadian Certified ELD. Again, we do this through a third party because for this exact same reason, we want it developed the way it needs to be developed and audited the way it needs to be audited, that it's always current. And we do a very sophisticated reefer control, that we can manage fleet reefers on the computer or on an iPhone, iPad, whatever. But then on top of that, that's the data side. That's the things that we bring. And we have a whole lot more. One of the things that we really focused on was making sure that we're compatible, making sure that we're integratable, easily sharing APIs in either direction. We wanted to make sure that if an organization had a system in place that they were already using, but they wanted to add one of our products, we wanted to make it incredibly easy for those two to communicate. Because why would you want to replace something that you like because you're adding something else? So that was our big focus from the software and data side. Now, on the other side, the main characters in our organization, so our chief operating officer comes from the regulatory side of hazmat, so transportation of dangerous goods, waste disposal. So incredible on the consulting side. Mike also land transport, globally. Like we're not talking about just local. We have another individual that's also come from the same company I did for land transport, global safety, and then our HSE and risk manager is also a 30-year hand around risk management. We made sure, as we do talking with you, that that these guys understood and these guys live the methodology of that anchor, where we're focused on the end user, like we're focused on providing a solution that means something for the business and the people that are conducting the business. So we have a very, very major consulting side of the business, because we don't only want to give you the data and say, here, you bought this stuff from us and it's going to tell you everything you need to know. Good luck, have fun. Too many times I walked into offices and found, oh, why are your devices all sitting on the desk? Well, we don't know how to use it. People don't want to use it. People don't want it in their vehicles. Yeah. So we want to be the end-to-end solution, where we're saying, we'll help you get the right product, whether it's ours or somebody else's, but we'll help you vet the right product for the right reasons based on the objectives you have. And then we're excited to help organizations take all of these years of experience that we have and make them successful, relatively immediately, and show them how to be successful, show them how to focus on what they're trying to achieve. Because when you think about, eating an apple at one bite at a time, or an elephant or whatever it is, the reality is getting involved with data is exactly that. You need to have a strategy on what you're going to focus on. You need to show ROI in that focus before you move on. Because if you take on too many fronts, things become convoluted, blurry, and very, very frustrating. Yes. And then it really, after that, becomes a blame game. Like, I'm not getting help. This data doesn't do this. There's errors in the data. There's this, that, and the other thing. So we are all encompassing. We want to make sure that no matter what, the customer is satisfied. We're not big into holding customers to long-term agreements and legal fights saying, you got a 3-year contract with us, you're stuck. No, we want you to be free to move. We want you to be free to grow or retract. Businesses don't stay the same. Why should we force you to stay the same for over a period of time? We try to do everything that we possibly can to support the end goal of the customer.
There's a few things that you said there that I think really need to be highlighted. So first, so when we think of our world as whole, there's typically two types of people. They're either those that are really negative, or they're those that are really excited and positive. And sure, there's different personality types, but I think something that really stands out from a company perspective that people need to listen to is the enthusiasm for integration, for the enthusiasm of growth, and the enthusiasm of opportunity. And then the fact that Pioneer, you bring that attitude and you bring that focus, but you also bring the experience. So you understand the importance of vetting a product to make sure that it's the right product for that business, or it's the right consulting package, or the right health and safety program, or traffic control program. Like, I really respect that, because often people will sell a fake product and say, maybe not a fake, but they think it's cool, but then they don't answer the phone for tech support, or, oh, you can't figure it out. Oh, that's your problem. Instead of, no, we got this. Like, I will baby step this entire process as much as you need. So I think the enthusiasm really feeds that, but also the API and the easy integration is also really smart, because I often speak on the right technologies. And it's not a matter of having app overload where you have 19 different apps that have to be on your phone running all the time. It's, okay, what are the right technologies for your business? And then how do you streamline those? So it's nice knowing that Pioneer also lives in that space, because if you have to have 6 different programs between operations and safety and budget, performance, driver recording, you want to be able to do it streamlined the fastest and the best you can. Otherwise, really, you're not saving much time and effort. You're actually creating confusion and frustration. So I like the fact that you really live in those pillars, because again, we're familiar with different consultants across the country, and a lot of people are archaic. A lot of people are still, just write that down for me. And it's like, well, they don't have time to write that down for you every time that happens every 8 minutes. So why don't we figure out a better way? It's nice to know that you're leading the better way. And I think that's just, as industry and people listening to this episode, something to really grasp. If you're in a position of, hey, I need to work with a company on integrating this. Okay, well, maybe Pioneers you need to talk to. Maybe if it's just having a great conversation with Bob and his team on, this is what we're up against. What do you guys think? They have the years of experience to validate your thought process and your ideas, and tell you straight up, I don't know if you want to waste any money on that, or actually, yeah, that's very viable. That's definitely possible. So just a big shout out to Pioneer too. And Bob, you're doing a great job leading the way, you and Mike, obviously. And yeah, it's just really nice to see. So if I'm putting myself, I'm meeting you for the first time. I'm new to a leadership position, and I'm super eager to create an impact in the organization. Maybe it's to eliminate a hazard that's ongoing, injuries that are repetitive, or bringing our world into the technological age. What advice, and you can keep it to one thing or 10 things, wherever you want to go with it, but what advice would you share if you're a new safety leader looking to really create an impact?
Well, I mean, in all honesty, let's go back to the anchor analogy, right? You have to understand what you're trying to achieve. We have to clearly understand it's not about writing a document and getting our name on it and getting the accolades that go with it. It's not about, a fancy business card with a big title. Big title and a business card doesn't mean a whole lot, to be 100% honest with you. Yes. But if you truly want to be successful, understand why you're there. You're there to support the people performing the task. If you take an org chart and you lay it on its side, right, so that it's going east and west versus north and south, and if you took the pointy end and you got rid of it, could you still perform the task? Right? You can't, because the people are at the end users are the one performing the task. So that should describe to you what your job is at the pointy end. At the pointy end, it's about integrity, and 100% integrity. And it's about the commitment to making sure that those that are doing the task at the very end are being provided the tools they need to be successful. You can't initiate failure by forcing people to do what you think might work. You need to listen. You need to be open-minded. You need to hear what's saying. And yes, at the end, you have to make a decision, but make sure it's an educated decision. Remove the biases. Remove, all of the things that, I hear it so often, our guys are just not smart enough, so we got to make it real simple. No, nobody's not smart enough. Everybody's smart, but you have to find a way to relate to that person, because we're not all the same. Right? I take a look at my dad, very, very simple man. But for 45 years, he went in that hole with dirty old coveralls and drilled and blasted, day in and day out. I've been underground about 4 times, and it drove me nuts each time I was there. So I couldn't imagine doing it every day for 45 years. Keep that integrity. Remember who you're doing it for. And it's no different dealing with your customers. Understand what they're trying to achieve. Believe in them. And, it's funny too, because the more I do this, the more I talk to different people. People are fed up with hearing it. Yes, I've heard it before. You are all about the customer. I've heard it before. It's time for us to start looking at integrity for what it is. And integrity is not about Pioneer becoming a company that's shared, we sell it to the stock market. That's not what it's about. It's about doing the right things. Do we want to make a living? 100%. No question we do. But if you're a new person going into an HSE role, hear what's going on. Spend more time listening. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Get the hint, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Key advice. I love integrity too. It's funny, when I first started this whole podcast journey and Pivotal as my company, I was really leaning on the word integrity because I believe that's a foundation in someone that defines your character. And it's like, what do you know about so-and-so? Well, they're a man of integrity or they're a woman of integrity. I think that to me is one of the best compliments you can get, one of the best reputations you can have. So I really agree with that advice. And I love that 2 ears, 1 mouth on purpose because, yeah, again, often we're fast to blah, 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 and then be like, oh, wait, I didn't even hear what your question was in the first place. So I appreciate that advice. Do you think about the legacy that you're leaving in our industry? Do you think about the, I like the word impact. I don't mean morbid way. I mean, you're helping a customer. I love the fact that you've already had so much positive reinforcement come back from customers saying, yeah, thanks for this. This is a great solution. But when you're working day to day, do you think about the legacy that you're leaving?
I don't know that I think about it. I don't think so. For me, I got old. And as I got older, and with my kids and having these different conversations, I just realized that we all know the difference between right and wrong. I mean, there's something that tells us in our minds and that we know we're doing the right thing or we're doing the wrong thing. And personally, I've made a decision, and the people that have followed us, through this adventure with Pioneer are all of the exact same mindset. And we all make mistakes and we all challenge each other. But if we can bring that integrity back to the industry, if we can start, it's one thing to put a post and say, and it's nice to see, don't get me wrong, but to put a post to say, you guys should believe in your truck drivers, da da da. Take a minute and think about it. When your package is delivered by Amazon, some guy in a truck drove through the snowstorm that you were sleeping through, and he got it there on time. A woman, a man, there's all kinds of people out there that are, going the extra mile, right? And there's a lot of different industries, not just the trucking industry, but we need to start to look at it from the perspective of, yes, they're doing good, but change is change. Change is not just about talking about change, right? It's not just about, oh yeah, it's not good. We got to do something different. Okay, well, let's do something. Oh, no, I don't want to change anything. No, seriously. If you want to change, if you want it to be better, we have to start looking at it from a different perspective. Yes. We have to stop arguing about it. We have to start listening about it, hearing the other people's perspective, understanding where they're coming from, and making educated decisions because we now understand together. And I think if I can help in any way in this industry, because I remember those days. I remember the long nights. I remember the snowstorms from Calgary all the way back to Moncton, New Brunswick. I just would like people to start to understand the reality of the commitment that people do, getting up every day and doing very, very difficult jobs. And be honest. Let's actually open the conversations up and really, really try to hit the nail on the head.
Yes, huge. And I'm an admirer of you. So it's nice to hear just a consistent message, and it's very humble. And I think that's a really key takeaway to our listeners right now that are intrigued by Bob and they're intrigued by Pioneer is he will speak to you. He'll give you the facts, but he's humble. And I think not enough professionals are willing to live in that space, because if you're able to recognize the hardships that different professionals, boots on the ground, go through, I think that's just a different level of leadership. So I appreciate that. Just as we come to a close, Bob, where can people go to learn more about Pioneer Safety Solutions as well? Were there any final thoughts that you wanted to share today?
Pioneer, we have a LinkedIn presence at Pioneer Safety Solutions Limited, and also we have a web page now. Our current web page is a simple landing page. We're a relatively new company, but we have a brand new, shiny, exciting web page that we'll be adding here very, very shortly, and all of our contact information is on our web page. as far as adding anything else, like, no, I just want to say to you, Josh, that I really appreciate what you're doing. I've actually spoken to a few people now that are aware of what you're doing, know you, and really respect what you're doing. And I'm excited when people decide to say, okay, there is something wrong, but let's make a change, a real change. Like, you don't have to hit your head in the wall 3 times to figure out it hurts. The first time was enough.
Yes.
You're having conversations with people, and people are listening, and people are having a voice to speak about positive change and how we go about doing that. So I just wanted to tell you that I'm very humbled and honored that you invited me to have this conversation. I'm going to tell you that I am terrible at this. I've really, really, really removed me from my comfort zone to sit and have this conversation. Like, I'm a one-on-one guy that, I want to talk about the solution. I'm not much for just chatting. So I hope I sounded okay, but I do truly appreciate, you involving, and I do really appreciate the effort you're putting into an industry that really needs people like you. So thanks.
That means a lot. So thank you. I take the compliment with a full heart, man. That means awesome. That means a lot. But you did awesome. And I know that from a listener base, we try and keep that focus in mind of, okay, if I was listening, what questions did I have that I want to get asked? And you crushed it. So I really appreciate, again, the humility. You lead with integrity, and you're definitely taking just our industry and companies collectively into our future, which obviously is technology, but it's also embracing, okay, what are people going through, and is it the right solution? So I think ultimately you did a great job, Bob. And I'm just, again, thank you so much for those kind words, because that really helps just my mission, where I'm really trying to introduce industry leaders like yourself to industry to create a pivotal impact. So that way people know that, hey, there's an option. I don't have to be misguided, or I don't have to be lied to or treated like crap and say, well, you signed the contract. Like, there's options out there, and there's good leaders out there doing the right thing. So I really appreciate, again, Bob, you hopping on and just taking the time to obviously go through our conversation. We shared so much value that I just feel our listeners got a ton. I made so many notes throughout, because that's how I really take away, because then I can reflect on the conversation after. And yeah, I'm excited just for the journey ahead, and the more interactions and just business involvements that we have on the go. It's really exciting. So thank you again.
100%. And like I said, if people are looking for true integrity, if people are looking for people that truly, truly, truly believe in their success and want, a solution or ideas, give us a call, because we truly mean it.
Awesome. Yeah, all your contact details will also be in the show notes, so people can definitely reach out to you there. But yeah, thanks again, Bob. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Thanks. Bye, Josh.
So one of my favorite parts of our conversation with Bob was when he talked about bringing integrity back into our industry. I honestly completely agree, and it totally aligns with our mission here at the podcast. So Bob, thank you so much for hopping on. Just really value-packed information you shared. I highly recommend connecting with Bob either on LinkedIn or visiting his website, pioneersafetysolutions.com, to learn more about how his company can help you. So Bob, thank you again. Really appreciate you taking the time. And to our listeners, before you leave, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, like the episode, share it out. Let's get the word out there, because Bob and Pioneer Safety Solutions, they're honestly creating an incredible pivotal impact in our industry. And it's just really great to hear just his perspective through his journey on how he really cares, and his team really cares about the people and the success of people, and understanding, okay, if I'm going to implement this product or this solution or this telematic device, what's your end game? And we want to make sure that your end game and you're successful, your ROI complements the effort that goes in. So ultimately, again, connect with Bob, connect with Pioneer Safety Solutions. Their contact details are in the show notes. As always, let's create a pivotal impact. Bye for now.